Due to copyright, I can't publish many audiobooks on YouTube. At our audiobook novel service, we offer access to over 300 full novels from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, Wuxia, and more, all in high-quality audio format. Each novel is available with a one-time payment only. No subscriptions, no monthly payment, and no ads. Payments via PayPal or Ko-fi. To browse the full list of available novels, message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out our full catalog on Discord. Chapter 41, Heartstrings. These are just regular players. No good loot on them, Ethan remarked. The others should be in position by now, right? Yeah, Ryan and Slashblade are ready over there, Radiant Jester replied. But the enemy hasn't made a move yet. No idea what they're waiting for. Ethan frowned. Could they have already given up? He opened the guild chat and confirmed the situation with Skyblade. Then his expression hardened. It's time. The enemy has been forcibly logged out, but during a guild war, their in-game avatars remain online. Tell the rogues stationed at their respawn points to keep killing them until they're down to level 1. After that, keep going until their gear stops dropping. Originally, Ethan had been brainstorming ways to turn the entire enemy guild red-named. Now there was no need. Under Ethan's leadership, this guild war had become a near-flawless victory. With minimal losses, Renegade Alliance had decimated Unity Hall's leadership and top players. The fallout was immediate. Dozens of players quit Unity Hall, leaving the guild in disarray. Their reputation, already tarnished by bullying local players, turned public sentiment fully against them. In the days to come, Unity Hall would face relentless revenge from the entire Zone 1370 player base. Without their core members, Overlord's Unity Hall was on the brink of collapse. It might survive, but only after the players moved out of the starter zone, where they could attempt to rebuild. Seeing that his presence was no longer needed, Ethan bid farewell to Lila and her group of rowdy friends. Amid their playful teasing, he stepped onto the teleportation array in the starter zone and returned to Harmony City. Little did Ethan know, the Guild War had become a global sensation. A player had uploaded video footage to Aeon Corporation's official forums, specifically in the player discussion section. Within minutes, the post had over 1 million views, and the count continued to climb. The comments section exploded. Some cheered, saying Unity Hall deserved its fate. Others praised Renegade Alliance as righteous avengers. Still, others argued that not all Unity Hall players were at fault, accusing Renegade Alliance of going too far. The debate quickly escalated. Insults were hurled, and the conversation spiraled into personal attacks and even regional prejudice. Aeon Corporation was eventually forced to intervene, locking the thread to prevent further chaos. Ethan, oblivious to the online uproar, had transformed into his stag form and was galloping down the main road leading north to Springhaven. Originally, his plan was simple: return to Harmony City from the starter zone, spend some money to teleport to the 2 other cities, buy the plots of land he needed, and return to complete his quest. What he hadn't expected was this. Ding. System notification. Teleportation to Springhaven is currently unavailable. He stared at the message, cursing under his breath. Was the teleportation array genuinely out of service? Or was the city lord, Gregor Darnell, deliberately making things difficult for him? In his stag form, it would take him 6 hours of running to reach Springhaven. From there, it was another 10-hour trek to Blackridge. If the teleportation arrays in Blackridge were also unusable, he'd waste nearly 3 days just traveling. The thought was infuriating, especially since the second-ranked player on the leaderboard had already hit level 9. He had no idea what the top players in other regions were doing. But one thing was certain: in his previous life, that archer, Feather, had left the starter zone in just 10 days. If Ethan couldn't use teleportation, he might only barely make it back before Feather left the zone. With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Ethan continued his long run until the game's scheduled shutdown forced him offline. After logging out, Ethan wasted no time. He went straight to Lila's room and knocked on her door. Today, she hadn't logged off early, no doubt because the Guild War had been exhilarating for her. His guess was spot on. When Lila opened the door, she launched into an excited recap, talking about how precise her commands had been, how flawlessly she timed everything, and so on. They sat at the dining table near the floor-to-ceiling windows, enjoying breakfast. Ethan listened to her storytelling, a faint smile on his face. After enduring 5,000 years of solitude in the dream world, this peaceful reality was nothing short of beautiful. Ethan couldn't help but recall a moment from his previous life, a drunken night in the game with Moonbeam that had changed everything. Now, as he watched Lila standing before him in nothing but a silk camisole, bathed in the golden glow of morning sunlight, those memories surged forward. The light caressed her face and shoulders, making her skin shimmer with an almost ethereal softness. Every detail, her lashes, the smooth curve of her neck, the faint flush on her cheeks, seemed impossibly perfect. Ethan's chest tightened, a heat stirring within him. Beneath his gaze, Lila seemed to sense his thoughts. Flustered, she grabbed a piece of bread from her plate and stuffed it into her mouth. "I'm done eating," she mumbled, rising to take her plate to the open-plan kitchen. As she passed by him, Ethan reached out and caught her wrist. Lila froze, her breath hitching, unsure of what to do. Without a word, Ethan gently took the plate from her hand, setting it back on the table. Then, with a firm tug, he pulled her into his arms. Last night in the game, holding Lila had been a starkly different experience. Her armor was an obstacle. Now it was the opposite. Her warmth, her softness, it was intoxicating. In his embrace, Lila felt a reassuring strength that went beyond physicality. She had already made her choice to be with him. She wouldn't have sacrificed so much or moved to Harmony City to find him otherwise. For years, she had quietly followed Ethan's life, never stepping forward, though her feelings had grown deeper with every passing moment. But this time was different. This was her chance, one she'd fought hard to have. Ethan's hold on her tightened. A part of him wanted nothing more than to claim her entirely. Yet he also knew it wasn't the right time, not yet. Lila shifted slightly in his arms, her gaze soft and uncertain. Ethan sighed inwardly. He knew if he made a move now, she wouldn't resist. The realization quickened his heartbeat. Were they already more than just friends? Were they finally something more? "Lila," Ethan murmured near her ear. "Yeah?" she whispered back, her voice barely audible. With a sudden motion, Ethan lifted her off her feet and set her on the dining table. Lila gasped, wrapping her arms around his neck, her legs instinctively tightening around his waist. The faint floral scent of her hair filled Ethan's senses as he held her close. In her mind, Lila's thoughts raced. Was he really going to? She let out a soft sound, her entire body trembling, unable to muster the strength to move. Ethan's mind flashed back to his past life. How had she felt then, during those moments they had sex in the game? Surely, she had known it was him. She must have. He had told her his in-game ID, hadn't he? Looking at her now, vulnerable and trusting in his arms, Ethan ran his hands slowly along her back, feeling her shiver beneath his touch. He leaned in, his voice low and steady in her ear. "Should we take this further?" Chapter 42. Deceptive Moves. Ethan's hand glided over the silky fabric of Lila's nightgown, tracing up to her neck. His fingers tangled gently in her hair. We're going to be late for class," he teased, his other hand landing a playful smack on her rounded curve. "Mm." Lila felt the heat of his touch and the warmth of his breath brushing against her ear. Her body shivered, caught between pleasure and nervous anticipation. She squirmed in his arms, desperately trying to ground herself. But when the tension inside her finally broke, she trembled violently, her voice escaping in a soft, melodic gasp. Her strength left her completely. Even her arms, which had been tightly wrapped around Ethan, slackened as she slipped downward, boneless and flushed. Ethan froze, startled by her sensitivity. Moments later, Lila's face burned red as a wave of embarrassment overwhelmed her. She pushed him away, flustered. I'm going to freshen up," she stammered before hurriedly making her way upstairs. But as she reached the staircase, her shaky legs betrayed her, nearly causing her to stumble. She gripped the banister tightly, not daring to look back at Ethan, and fled up the spiral staircase as though running for her life. Watching her retreating figure, Ethan glanced at the edge of the dining table, which for some reason now had a dark patch, as though something had spilled there. "I didn't even do anything," he muttered to himself, though his thoughts betrayed him. Images of the moment replayed in his mind, tempting and vivid. Upstairs, he could only imagine what Lila was doing behind the closed door. A short while later, Lila returned, her expression a mix of awkwardness and determination. Ethan had already tidied up and was waiting for her. When their eyes met, her cheeks flushed again, and she shot him a glare. "Hurry up, we're going to be late for class." Despite her tone, her embarrassment was clear, and her face grew even redder as she spoke. "Ethan," simply rubbed his nose and avoided teasing her further. He opened the door, and the two of them stepped out of the villa, one after the other. The school, it was another boring day for Ethan. The buzz around campus was all about last night's guild war. Ethan, the mastermind behind it all, listened quietly as a bystander, smiling but offering no comments. That evening, Ethan logged back into the game and spent 5 hours traveling on foot. At last, he reached Springhaven. The moment he stepped into the city, a system notification popped up. Ding! System notification. You are the first player to reach Springhaven. Reputation with Springhaven plus 200. Ding! Zone announcement. Player is the first to reach Springhaven. All city functions are now unlocked. Smiling to himself, Ethan immediately equipped the disguise mask that Gregor Darnell had given him. Ding! Disguise functionality activated. Please select your disguise type. Player, NPC, or monster. Player. Ethan chose. Ding. Player disguise confirmed. Please select a player name to copy. Overlord, Ethan said with a mischievous grin. Ding. Copy successful. Disguise mask usage -1. Remaining uses 11. Duration, 3 hours. During the disguise duration, you cannot access the original player's assets, equipment, or items. Any items obtained during this period can be traded or transferred. However, all items acquired during this time will transfer to the original player when the disguise ends. As the notification faded, white mist enveloped Ethan's body. When it cleared, he raised his hand to inspect himself. Sure enough, his appearance had changed to that of Overlord, complete with a mage's robes. Even his displayed name matched. Satisfied with the disguise, Ethan hurried toward the property office, his heart racing. Halfway there, a realization struck him like a lightning bolt. The system prompt had said the disguise only lasted 3 hours. That wasn't enough time to make it back to Harmony City. If he didn't adjust his plan, he'd be handing Overlord a free fortune. Cursing under his breath, Ethan turned back and made a beeline for the teleportation hub. Reaching the array, he activated the control panel and tested his options. The teleportation array to Blackridge was still unavailable, but the option to return to Harmony City had finally opened. It seemed Gregor Darnell wasn't sabotaging him after all. It was likely that the main city hadn't been fully activated yet, which explained the restricted teleportation. With Harmony City now accessible, Ethan felt a wave of relief. He wouldn't have to reveal his real identity to complete his schemes. If worst came to worst, he could abandon this region entirely. Still, missing the chance to frustrate Overlord gnawed at him. Shaking off the thought, Ethan made his way back to the property office. Without wasting time, he approached the receptionist and began selecting plots of land. By the end, he'd spent a staggering 9,980 gold to purchase 14 prime locations in Springhaven. Meanwhile, far away in Zone 1370 Starter Village, Overlord's system notifications were going wild. Ding! Congratulations! You have purchased plot number 1 in Springhaven. Ding! Congratulations! You have purchased plot number 2 in Springhaven. At first, Overlord was bewildered, but as the messages continued to roll in, each detailing the acquisition of valuable land under his name, his confusion turned to elation. A veteran gamer, he understood the massive potential of in-game real estate. Properties bought cheaply from the system could skyrocket in value, sometimes increasing 100-fold, mirroring real-world real estate trends. After being utterly humiliated by Renegade Alliance the previous day, his guild shattered, his loyal followers beaten back to level 1, and his equipment stripped, he had been on the verge of a breakdown. But now, this unexpected fortune felt like a lifeline. With so much prime land under his control, Overlord was already imagining his triumphant return to power. He saw himself rising above his past defeats, absorbing smaller guilds, and building a sprawling empire. He even entertained the thought of breaking free from the financial backer who had been manipulating him for years. With enough resources, he could finally forge his own path. His renewed energy was evident to his subordinates, who watched in shock as he dove headfirst into monster packs, fighting with an intensity they had never seen before. "What's gotten into the boss?" one muttered. "He usually hangs back to leech experience." 20 minutes later, Ethan exited the property office and headed straight for the teleportation hub. The trip back to Harmony City cost him a hefty 20 gold. Were it not for his substantial savings, he might have been forced to abandon this entire scheme. Once in Harmony City, Ethan approached the town hall, though he worried about how to meet the city lord. Ordinary players couldn't simply stroll into such places without a specific quest. Attempting to force their way in would result in being executed by the guards and tossed into the dungeon. To his surprise, the captain of the guard, Roland Carter, was stationed at the entrance. The moment Roland spotted Ethan, now disguised as Overlord, he wasted no time escorting him inside. Apparently, Gregor Darnell had left orders. For the next 10 days, any player who came to the town hall was to be granted immediate access to meet him. Ethan realized this arrangement was designed specifically for his task. With no other players expected to show up during this window, Gregor had cleared the path to ensure Ethan could complete his objective without interference. Still, the undercurrents of NPC politics intrigued him. What exactly was Gregor gaining from this maneuver? Once in Gregor's office, Ethan didn't waste words. Using his Overlord disguise, he handed over the deeds to the land he'd purchased in Springhaven. Gregor accepted the documents without much ceremony. He barely spoke, likely avoiding drawing the system's attention. After finalizing the transfer, Ethan removed the disguise mask. Ding! Congratulations! You have completed part 1 of Gregor Darnell's request. Reputation with Gregor Darnell plus 150. Current reputation, 0. Hearing the notification, Ethan chuckled. So I started in the negatives with him, huh? Despite completing the task, Gregor's demeanor shifted. His previously lifelike interactions gave way to a cold, mechanical presence. It was as if the system had reasserted control over him, dampening his humanity. Chapter 43. A Costly Endeavor. Ethan exited the town hall, hesitating at the steep teleportation costs. He briefly debated walking to Blackridge, but the only route passed through Springhaven. Clenching his teeth, he reluctantly spent 20 gold coins to return to Springhaven. From there, he resumed his journey on foot. As Ethan trekked through the sprawling roads, someone else was facing his own storm of emotions. Zachary had logged out of the game. Inside his room, chaos reigned. Every item lay shattered across the floor. Even his high-tech VR capsule had been bashed nearly out of shape by the relentless blows of a baseball bat. The reason for his tantrum? Simple. While Ethan, bearing Zachary's name in-game, continually transferred land titles to new owners, the system notifications flooded in. By the end, not only had Zachary lost every land deed he owned, but his reputation in Springhaven had plummeted by 4,200 points. Although he had no clue what a city's reputation stat affected, he knew it couldn't be good. His initial joy had soured into bitterness. The roller coaster of emotions left Zachary unhinged. After venting his fury on the furniture, Zachary sank into a chair, his eyes glowing with venomous hatred. His thoughts spun. There was only one person capable of reaching the main city to pull off this betrayal. He pulled out his phone, hesitated, then dialed a number. On the other end, a voice answered in a clipped foreign accent. "Who are you looking for?" Switching to fluent Japanese, Zachary responded, "I need you to find someone for me." Unbeknownst to Ethan, his rebirth had accelerated certain events, nudging them beyond his control. Running tirelessly, Ethan made his way closer to Blackridge before the game's servers went offline. The following day at school, life remained uneventful. Even Lila, who had always been unusually friendly toward him, now maintained a distant, almost hesitant demeanor after recent events. Whenever Ethan's gaze landed on her, she froze as if caught mid-step. The tension was enough to make Ethan wonder if he had gone too far. Yet every time he saw Lila, the image of wet stains on the dining table flashed in his mind, bringing back a tide of emotions. Still, he couldn't figure out what he'd done. After all, he hadn't really done anything, right? When night fell, Ethan logged back into the game, finally making it to Blackridge after over an hour of travel. Claiming the reputation rewards tied to his real name, Ethan once again donned his disguise mask. This time, he chose to mimic the username Nightfall. As the white mist faded, Ethan glanced down. His brows furrowed as he noticed two large additions to his chest. He took a tentative step, immediately feeling off balance, leaning forward slightly. Struggling to adjust, he had a sudden thought. Glancing around to ensure no one was nearby, Ethan carefully slipped a hand into his waistband. "Phew, still here," he muttered in relief. A strange mix of emotions surfaced, relief followed by a pang of disappointment. Shaking his head, Ethan instinctively reached for his newly enhanced chest, giving it a light squeeze. Huh, didn't feel this big before, he mused. Quickly shaking off the moment, Ethan confirmed once more that no one was around before briskly heading to Blackridge's property office. After wrapping up the paperwork, he spent nearly all the 20,000 gold coins gifted by Lord Gregor, leaving only 3 coins to his name. Satisfied, he strutted toward the teleportation hub, spending a staggering 53 gold coins to return to Harmony City. The farther the distance, the steeper the teleportation fees. By late game, such expenses were a luxury few players could afford. Many would rather endure grueling treks than burn their savings on teleportation. Back in Harmony City, Ethan checked his inventory. Only 95 gold coins remained, and 3 of those were task-restricted coins from Lord Gregor, meaning they couldn't be spent freely. Ethan sighed deeply. Making money's hard. Spending it? That's way too easy. The recent guild battle had been costly. He had spent a small fortune compensating his fallen comrades. Sure, Unity Hall had been completely crippled, and their looted equipment, once converted, would undoubtedly yield a hefty profit. But the repeated teleportation fees alone had eaten through most of the earnings. Although Ethan had secured usage rights for multiple properties, turning them into a source of income required time. Other players would need to reach the main city, develop the economy, and create demand. Until then, the land would sit idle. If he wanted to make money now, he'd need to think of something himself. What can I do to make money without halting my progress? Ethan muttered, racking his brain for ideas. He thought long and hard. Unfortunately, every idea required other players to arrive in the main city first. No choice. He'd just have to focus on leveling up for now. Ethan returned to the town hall, where he met with Lord Gregor to complete his task. His favorability with Gregor increased by another 300 points, and Ethan noticed a subtle change in the city lord's demeanor. His tone was warmer, though still mechanical. Gone was the spirited, human-like debate they'd had a few days ago. Puzzled but unwilling to linger on it, Ethan left the town hall. As he prepared to search for a life skills trainer, a video call notification flashed across his screen. It was Leo, known in-game as Skyblade. "Boss, we're stuck in the dungeon. Help us out." Leo blurted the moment Ethan accepted the call, his face a mix of urgency and frustration. "You guys went to clear the murky swamp?" Ethan asked, raising a brow. "Yeah. The 3 of us took a bunch of level 10 guildmates to tackle it. We've been at it all night, and we still can't finish," Leo groaned. The murky swamp was the first dungeon in the starter zone and the only one available there. The dungeon had 5 difficulty modes: easy, normal, hard, expert, and hell. The harder the difficulty, the better the loot and experience rewards. However, it also required tighter teamwork, better coordination, and higher quality gear. The easy mode could be run endlessly, but its loot drop rate was comparable to the wilds, offering only marginally higher experience. Still, completing it awarded bonus experience upon clearing. Normal mode allowed 1 run per day, resetting after the server rebooted the following day. Hard mode could only be cleared once per week, resetting every Monday at 6 p.m. Expert mode refreshed monthly, unlocking on the first day of each month. Hell mode was unique. It had a strict time limit and required a flawless 5-star completion rating to earn rewards. The guaranteed reward? A piece of gold-tier equipment. Achieving a 5-star rating, however, was incredibly difficult. While beating the time limit wasn't too challenging, earning maximum stars required perfection, flawless execution, and attention to every detail. Even in the late game, when teams returned to clear low-level dungeons, achieving a perfect score on Hell mode was rare. For many top-tier groups, managing it once in 10 attempts was considered impressive. This was the reality of dungeon mechanics in the world of Ethereal. As for how to achieve a 5-star rating, Ethan knew all the tricks. He was confident that with a disciplined team that followed his commands to the letter, earning 5 stars in Hell mode wouldn't be an issue. But dungeons were only as strong as their weakest link. A team's success depended on its players' skill levels, execution, and overall awareness. Ethan couldn't help but shake his head when Leo admitted they were running the easy mode of Murky Swamp. "How many people do you have? And what are their levels?" Ethan asked after a moment of thought. Leo sighed. "It's me, Seraph Warrior, and Slashblade. We're all level 11 now. The rest are 27 guild members who just hit level 10. Chapter 44. The Plan for Profit. Ethan frowned as he read Skyblade's message. What's the breakdown of classes and numbers? Skyblade quickly responded. 30 people in total, 3 shield tanks, 3 greatsword warriors, 2 dual blade rogues, 3 paladins, 5 priests, 2 assassins, 5 archers, 5 mages, and 2 warlocks. He also sent Ethan the full team composition for review. Out of your shield tanks, who has the highest health and defense? Ethan asked. That'd be me, Skyblade replied confidently. In defensive stance, my health is 1,108, and my defense is 792. The other 2 just hit level 10 and upgraded their gear through the guild, so their health is around 980, and defense is in the 500s. Shield tanks in their defensive stance didn't have the raw health boost that druids gained from their bear form, but their defense multiplier 480%, along with shield blocks and other mechanics, made them reliable main tanks in dungeons. Here's what you should do. Split into 2 teams. With your health and defense stats, you can tank this dungeon solo without needing an off-tank. If it gets too rough, have Seraph Warrior equip a shield and switch to defensive aura to cover you now and then. The other 2 tanks meet the defense and health thresholds, so they're fine as backups, Ethan explained. Why split into 2 teams? Wouldn't more players mean clearing faster? Skyblade sounded confused. Most dungeons in ethereal scale dynamically. The more players you bring, the higher the monster's health and defense. If some of your damage dealers can't output enough to compensate for the increased stats, you'll actually clear slower or worse, fail, Ethan said bluntly. This was something most players didn't know yet, as they were still stuck in the mindset of older games. Alright, we'll give it a shot. Any other tips or tricks for the dungeon? Skyblade asked, his tone more trusting now. You're doing easy mode. There's no need for fancy tactics, just brute force your way through. Easy and normal modes allow 12 to 30 players. For the smoothest and fastest run, stick with 18 players. That's the sweet spot for minimal scaling at this difficulty, Ethan explained. Really? We've wiped so many times already. If we fail again, someone's going to drop back to level 9, Skyblade muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. And there it was, the real reason for his urgency. Don't worry, you can't lose a level in dungeons. Once your experience hits 0, it won't drop any further, Ethan replied, rolling his eyes at Skyblade's panic. In Ethereal, dungeon deaths didn't cost gear or levels, but each death deducted 5% of a player's experience. If their experience hit 0, it couldn't drop further, ensuring players didn't get locked out of dungeons due to level requirements. That's why most teams started dungeons immediately after leveling up. With minimal experience to lose, deaths didn't sting as much. Still, repeated deaths could add up to significant losses if players weren't careful. Shutting off the chat, a sudden idea struck Ethan. Wait a minute. If Skyblade and his crew were already clearing the murky swamp, then other players had to be attempting it too. While easy mode was little more than an XP farm with negligible loot, normal mode presented a bit of a challenge. Hard and expert modes required well-coordinated teams. As for hell mode, at this level, beating the timer was a pipe dream, let alone earning a 5-star rating and claiming the top-tier rewards. But that gave Ethan an idea. What if he sold dungeon strategies? He already had all the dungeon mechanics and boss patterns mapped out in his head. That kind of information could be converted into gold, lots of gold. The idea lit a spark in Ethan's mind. However, the details of how to implement it still needed work. After all, there was no way for him to directly broadcast his strategy to players scattered across so many starter zones. If he wanted to profit, he had to act fast. The early rush of dungeon activity was the prime window, before players figured out the strategies themselves and devalued his knowledge. There was another problem. Once he sold even a single copy, it could spread quickly. While in-game confidentiality contracts existed, nothing stopped players from sharing strategies in the real world. Pondering his options, Ethan recalled someone who might be the key. Trusty 007. Ethan knew Trusty 007 wasn't just an individual but the face of a well-organized team. They had operatives stationed in multiple starter zones, managing gold transactions and other services. If anyone could help him advertise dungeon strategies across a wide range of players, it was them. Without hesitation, Ethan opened his friend list and sent a message to Trusty 007. Got a business proposal. Lots of profit potential. Message me if you're interested. With that handled, Ethan made his way to the life skills trainers. He approached the herbalism trainer and paid 5 copper coins to learn basic herbalism, which allowed him to gather low-level herbs. As he walked past the mining trainer, a booming voice called out, "Come on, learn mining.
A guaranteed gold mine.
No investment, high returns. The perfect path to wealth and success. Ethan didn't even glance his way. Screw that, he thought. I mined for 3 years in my past life, and where did that get me? Stuck in a pitch-black cave, barely scraping by on instant noodles. With 2 secondary skill slots still open, Ethan pondered his options. He wasn't planning to invest too much time in secondary professions. Herbalism was already a practical choice for harvesting rare herbs in the wild. The rest of the professions required dedicated practice and, often, sacrificing combat time to make progress. After some thought, Ethan spent another 5 copper coins to learn skinning, which allowed him to harvest pelts from defeated beasts, a decent way to earn extra income. Naturally, he also picked up leatherworking, figuring it would pair well with skinning. He knew the locations of 2 valuable leather armor blueprints, one for mid-game gear and another for powerful late-game armor. Satisfied with his new skills, Ethan glanced at his inventory. There, tucked away, was the pilot's watch he had looted from the wrecked plane back in the starter zone. Guess it's time to wrap up this little side quest, he murmured. Teleporting to Cogden Village cost just 1 copper coin. Teleports within Harmony City's jurisdiction were relatively cheap. Cogden Village was nestled in the Gornith Hills, a modest area just outside the starter zone. After leaving behind the futuristic remnants of the crash site, everything here felt old-fashioned and primitive. NPCs lived in simple, earthen homes with a rustic, pastoral vibe that reminded Ethan of something out of a frontier town. The place was quiet now, but Ethan knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. The monsters surrounding the village ranged from levels 15 to 20. For newly freed players leaving the starter zone, this was the first proper leveling area. Before long, players from across the northern frontier region who had chosen Harmony City as their first main hub would flock here. Ethan could still remember the crowds from his previous life, streets packed with players forming parties, the constant chatter, and the palpable excitement of exploring new territory. Just walking through the village felt like wading through a bustling marketplace. Chapter 45. Into the Plaguelands. Ethan wandered around the quiet village, relying on his memory to navigate. After several minutes, he finally found what he was looking for, a dilapidated shack. The place looked barely functional, with broken windows and a door that seemed to hang by a thread, just sturdy enough to block out the wind and rain. This should be it, Ethan muttered, stepping inside. In the small courtyard, he spotted a young girl, no older than 11 or 12, sitting on the porch. She rested her chin in her hands, her gaze fixed on the sky. That's her, Ethan confirmed to himself. Walking closer, he said, "Hey there, little one. Still waiting for the plane today?" The girl's eyes lit up as she heard him, her face bright with curiosity. "You know about planes too?" Ethan smiled. Her reaction sparked a bit of confidence in him. This was how the side quest was supposed to begin, though he couldn't help feeling nervous. After all, in his past life, he hadn't completed this quest personally. "Of course I do," Ethan replied. "I've even flown on one myself." The girl shot up to her feet, her excitement palpable. "Really? My dad's a pilot. He promised he'd come back one day in his plane to pick me up. But nobody in the village believes me. They all say planes don't exist." Ethan pulled out the pilot's watch from his inventory and held it out to her. "Planes are real," he said gently. "Your dad's just really busy right now. Thousands of people need to ride his plane every day. But he knows how much you miss him, so he asked me to bring this watch to you." Ethan's approach was drastically different from the original path taken by the person who had completed this quest in his past life. That player had told the girl the harsh truth, that her father had died. After accepting the watch, the girl had given that player a silver tier bracer she'd found in the forest. Later, when the game developers released a detailed guide for this quest, it revealed an alternate route. Conceal the pilot's death and leave the girl with hope for the future. Choosing this path would unlock a follow-up quest. The player who had taken the harsher approach had regretted it bitterly after seeing the guide. The girl took the watch eagerly, her eyes brimming with excitement. "It's really my dad's. Look, my name is engraved on the back. Thank you so much, big bro. I haven't heard from my dad in over a year, and I've missed him so much. Here, take this as a thank you. I found it in the forest while playing with my friends." Ding. System notification. You've received an item. Sorintha's token. Ding. System notification. With Sorintha's token, travel to the Plaguelands and find Archmage Sorinth to unlock the next quest. Smiling, Ethan bid the girl farewell. The Plaguelands, a level 40 zone. Fortunately, there was a small town there with a teleportation hub he could use. As Ethan made his way to the teleportation point, a private message popped up in his chat. It was from Trusty007. Got a good business opportunity? Let's hear it. Murky Swamp Dungeon Strategy, Ethan replied. He hadn't expected a fast response, but Trusty007 immediately sent a video call request. Accepting the call, Ethan was met with a polite greeting from Trusty007, who then got straight to the point. Strategies can be tricky to sell. They're a one-time purchase, and once someone leaks it, it spreads like wildfire, Trusty007 said, his tone matter-of-fact. I know, Ethan replied, grinning. That's why I came to you, to handle the operation. Oh, Trusty007's eyes gleamed with interest. Looks like you already have a plan. Let's hear it. It's not a complicated idea, Ethan began. I think my reputation and the notoriety of Renegade Alliance should still carry some weight, right? He paused, letting his words settle. Trusty007 chuckled. Some weight? That's an understatement. Sir, not a druid. Ethan smirked. Good. Here's the plan. Using my name, announce the sale of a guide for the expert mode of the Murky Swamp Dungeon in every starter zone you can cover. Include all lower difficulty guides as a bonus. As for the price, I'm setting it at 2 gold coins per copy. Start taking payments the moment you release the announcement. After 3 days, distribute the guide to everyone who's paid. Trusty007 thought it over, his expression intrigued. That actually sounds doable. The two struck a deal and signed an in-game authorization contract. This way, Trusty007's team could present proof that they were officially licensed to sell the guide under Ethan's name. With the arrangements in place, Ethan let the matter go. It wasn't his concern how many copies sold or how far it spread. Any income would be a welcome bonus at this point. Arriving at the teleportation hub, Ethan paid 10 silver coins to travel to a small town in the Plaguelands. The teleportation array lit up with dazzling colors. When the flash subsided, Ethan found himself in a withered forest. Towering trees stretched high into the gray skies, their branches holding a network of rickety treehouses. Years of rain and wind had left the structures barely standing. The town in the Plaguelands was a forsaken, desolate place. Long ago, it had served as a quarantine zone for those suffering from incurable infectious diseases. The treehouses had been their homes, and over time, the sick had become the region's permanent inhabitants. Now the place was nearly abandoned. A hunched NPC dressed in tattered burlap, with a longbow slung across his back, glared at Ethan. The figure radiated an unsettling, dangerous aura. Ethan quickly lowered his head and walked away, understanding the unspoken rule here. The locals considered themselves cursed and punished by the gods, eternally suffering from their afflictions. Strangers were unwelcome, and even the wrong glance could provoke a violent response. The NPC who had glared at Ethan might not have looked impressive, but he was a level 40 elite. In fact, none of the NPCs here were below level 40, making the town an extremely dangerous place for Ethan. Armed with memories from his past life, Ethan moved cautiously, knowing how to avoid drawing attention. Various NPCs passed by as Ethan navigated the town, always keeping his head down and his posture humble. He maintained a steady pace, carefully slipping past the eerie inhabitants until he finally made it out of the town. Exhaling in relief, Ethan activated his transformation ability. Deer form. His body shifted, becoming sleeker and more agile. Without wasting time, he sprinted down the forest path. The trees in the Plaguelands were unhealthy shades of ashen gray, their skeletal branches tightly packed together. The dense canopy blocked nearly all light, save for a few dim beams that slipped through the claw-like gaps in the branches. On the forest floor, these beams formed fragmented, ominous patterns. The oppressive atmosphere was suffocating, with twisted roots and overgrown thickets creating a labyrinth of decay. The monsters here were no joke, with most being level 35 or higher. Ethan remained hyper-focused, his ears tuned to the faintest sound. As he neared the monster respawn zone, Ethan switched to Panther from and entered stealth mode, his movements becoming virtually undetectable. Outside the Plaguelands, the world of Ethereal was bright and sunny. But here, the perpetual gloom turned the forest into an eerie twilight. The faint shafts of light only served to deepen the sense of dread, casting shadows that danced like specters on the ground. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of branches in the wind. To Ethan, none of this was overwhelming. He had endured over 5,000 years of trials in the dreamscape. This was nothing in comparison. Then, a faint rustling sound reached his ears. He froze, focusing on the noise coming from nearby. Chapter 46. The River of Blood. Ethan froze, halting mid-step as the faint rustling reached his ears. He glanced toward the sound, peering through the gaps between the gnarled tree trunks. A massive scorpion, monstrous and menacing, emerged from the shadows, its dark gray body blending seamlessly with the ashen soil. Its enormous stinger glimmered with a faint blue hue, exuding a lethal aura. If not for the noise it made, Ethan might never have noticed it. Remaining in his panther form, Ethan crouched low. He didn't dare make a move. The creature was a Deathstalker scorpion, a fast and deadly predator. Not even his enhanced agility in panther form could guarantee an escape. Its venom-coated stinger inflicted a fatal poison, one that would persist until death unless treated with a rare antidote. It was no wonder that even level 40 players avoided farming monsters in this area. These scorpions sensed prey through vibrations in the ground. One wrong step and they'd deliver a swift and fatal strike. Ethan's gaze lingered on the forest floor, knowing countless other Deathstalkers could be lying in wait beneath the dirt. When the scorpion finally burrowed into the soil and disappeared, Ethan exhaled quietly and slipped away, careful not to disturb the earth beneath his feet. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the beaten path disappeared entirely. The dense undergrowth grew thicker, forcing him to slow his pace. Almost there, Ethan muttered, checking the coordinates. The closer he got to his destination, the more vigilant he became. After pushing through a cluster of thorny brambles, he emerged into a small clearing. At its center stood an ancient altar, and beside it, a lean figure busied himself with some mysterious tasks. Ethan deactivated his stealth and approached cautiously. The name above the NPC's head glowed faintly in his vision. Archmage Sorinth. As Ethan drew closer, Sorinth fixed him with a sharp, hostile glare. Ethan quickly retrieved the token from his inventory, holding it out as an offering. The Archmage's expression shifted from hostility to curiosity. The scent of a healthy mortal. You come from beyond the Plaguelands. Tell me, how did you come by my token? Ethan let out a breath of relief, grateful that Sorinth hadn't attacked him on sight. This NPC was a level 55 elite. One blow from him would have been instant death. Still, Ethan couldn't tell the truth. Admitting he'd received the token from a little girl wouldn't sit well in this situation. Drawing on his past life knowledge of the questline, Ethan said, "Honored Archmage Sorinth, this was passed down to me by my ancestors." "Oh? A descendant of the people from Cogden village, are you?" Sorinth's voice was cold and emotionless. "You've journeyed far, bearing my token. Do you wish to enter the necrotic domain and undertake its trial?" Ding. System notification. "Do you accept the trial of the necrotic domain?" Yes," Ethan replied, answering both the system prompt and Sorinth's question. He hesitated briefly. This didn't align with the quest guide he remembered from his past life. Back then, the quest simply required returning the token to Sorinth to receive a reward. A golden tier item called the Boots of the Dead, which came with a speed boosting skill. Most side quests were straightforward. Find an item, return it and get your reward. It was rare for them to involve combat or trials. Those that did, however, always offered exceptional rewards. Have I triggered an alternate quest line? Ethan wondered, his mind racing. Sorinth handed the token back to Ethan. Its weathered, rust-covered surface was now pristine, transformed into a silver medallion. Sorinth's emblem, effect, protects the wearer from the corrupting miasma of the necrotic domain. Slot, chest. Description: a unique item that doesn't occupy equipment slots. Seeing Ethan equip the emblem, Sorinth raised his staff and waved it toward the altar. Chanting in an ancient, indecipherable language, he conjured a swirling rift of violet and black energy. The portal stabilized at the altar's center, crackling ominously. "Enter," Sorinth commanded. Ethan glanced at the swirling portal, then back at Sorinth. "When I return, will I come back here?" Sorinth grinned at Ethan's question, revealing a mouthful of jagged, razor-sharp teeth. "I can only open the entrance. As for how you return, that's entirely up to you." "What?" Ethan froze in shock. This wasn't part of the plan. Before he could decide whether to step through the portal, a powerful force yanked him forward. Sorintha's bony hand gripped Ethan's shoulder and hurled him into the rift without hesitation. The ritual has begun. Without a sacrifice, the backlash will destroy me. My master, take solace in the emblem and absorb the essence of death. Sorinth muttered to himself. Ethan, of course, heard none of this. He was swallowed whole by the darkness, a vast void stretching endlessly in all directions. Time and space ceased to exist. Floating aimlessly, Ethan felt as though he'd been trapped inside the maw of some incomprehensible creature. The weightlessness was disorienting. He flailed his limbs, attempting to propel himself in any direction, but no matter how hard he tried, he remained suspended in the same spot. So, this is the necrotic domain? Ethan wondered, his voice lost in the silence. Is this going to be like the dreamscape trial all over again? As he struggled to orient himself, a faint glow appeared ahead. A portal began to materialize, its edges forming a narrow crack that allowed a single beam of light to pierce the darkness. In this void, the light was blindingly bright. Before Ethan could react, an invisible force pulled him forward, dragging him through the portal and into the unknown. On the other side, he found himself standing on a massive floating bridge. What stunned him even more was the sight of countless NPCs wandering aimlessly across the bridge. Their movements were slow, their expressions vacant, and their eyes hollow. Before Ethan could fully process the scene, something bumped into him from behind. He turned to see another NPC, shuffling forward from the still active portal. The NPC that had collided with him stopped abruptly, staring at him with lifeless, unfocused eyes. The eerie gaze sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. Without thinking, he sidestepped, allowing the NPC to continue its journey. Freed of the obstruction, the NPC resumed walking, joining the throng of others heading toward the bridge. The procession was surreal. Humans, beasts, and monstrous hybrids of the two marched in a steady line. Their vacant expressions and mechanical movements made them resemble mindless automatons. Ethan hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. He followed the crowd, keeping a cautious distance. As he reached the edge of the bridge, he glanced downward. Beneath the bridge lay a vast abyss, and within it flowed a river of red liquid. The stench of iron and decay hit him like a wave. Is that blood? Ethan whispered, recoiling a step. The abyss seemed endless, and the river below churned with crimson fluid, its surface thick and sluggish. A river of blood, stretching into the depths of the unknown. Looking ahead, Ethan's gaze fell on a sign at the bridge's entrance, etched with 3 ominous words in deep red. Blood Abyss Bridge. On the far side of the bridge stood a towering figure, clad in strange, tattered robes. He wielded a long, pitch-black chain, the end of which held a massive anchor. Even from a distance, Ethan could feel the sharp, menacing aura radiating from the weapon. The figure swung the chain with terrifying precision, cutting down the NPCs that reached him. But the mindless NPCs showed no fear. Even as those ahead fell, the others continued to march forward, indifferent to their fate. Chapter 47. Red-Haired Woman. Ethan crouched behind a massive boulder at the edge of Blood Abyss Bridge, his sharp eyes scanning the chaos beyond. The towering figure on the other side continued his rampage, tearing through the NPCs without mercy. Yet, even with its relentless slaughter, a few managed to slip by, crossing the bridge and disappearing into the misty expanse ahead. After a while, Ethan sighed. Staying hidden wasn't going to solve anything. Just as he debated whether to make a run for it, the sound of creaking echoed behind him. A faint movement drew his attention to the massive iron gates far behind. A red-haired woman stepped through the gap, her fiery hair catching the dim light like a flicker of flame. Ethan's heart skipped. She was tall, easily a head taller than him, and her slitted pupils, reminiscent of a lizard's, glowed faintly in the shadows. Unlike the others, she didn't seem mindless. No, this one was sharp, focused. The moment the woman appeared, a wave of heat rolled over the area, making Ethan instinctively tense. Her eyes scanned the surroundings briefly before locking onto the bridge. Without hesitation, she began walking forward, her expression calm but deliberate. When her gaze landed on the rampaging brute, her slitted pupils flashed red. A faint beam of light shot from her eyes, crossing the bridge and landing squarely on the figure. Ethan froze. That's some kind of scanning ability, isn't it? The brute, oblivious to the beam, continued his carnage as if nothing had happened. But the red-haired woman's expression shifted, a flicker of unease crossing her face. She hesitated for a moment before slipping into the crowd of NPCs, blending in seamlessly. As she reached the bridge's edge, her eyes swept the area and landed directly on Ethan. Ethan's breath hitched. How? He was in stealth, carefully hidden behind the stone boulder, with only his head peeking out. For a second, the woman seemed puzzled. Then, she turned to face him directly. Panic shot through Ethan. Did she see me? He immediately cast appraisal on her, hoping to get some information. Name? Level? Attack? Defense? Nothing. Not even her name. Ethan frowned. Normally, even if an appraisal failed, the target's name would still appear. But this was completely blank. The woman's brow furrowed slightly, as if sensing something. She muttered a series of guttural sounds, her eyes flashing red again. This time, a beam of light shot toward Ethan. In an instant, his stealth shattered. He was completely exposed. She pointed directly at him, barking something unintelligible in her strange language. You speak English? Ethan asked hesitantly. The red-haired woman tilted her head, clearly not understanding. In the next instant, she closed the distance between them with alarming speed, her hand darting toward him. Ethan barely managed to sidestep. Her hand grasped at empty air, but she didn't stop. She kept lunging for him, relentless. What the hell is wrong with you? Ethan shouted, dodging again. He retaliated with rake, following it up with shred. Both skills connected, but there was no reaction. No health bar drop. No bleed effect. Nothing. She didn't even flinch. Ethan's attacks, with over 500 damage output, hadn't scratched her. Not even the system's forced damage reduction worked. What kind of monster are you? He muttered, narrowly avoiding another grab. Every time she reached for him, it was always the same target, his tail. That's it. You're insane. Ethan growled, transforming into his human form mid-dodge. Stop trying to grab my tail, you. The woman abruptly halted her pursuit. Her lizard-like eyes flicked to something behind him, her expression shifting slightly. She barked another string of incomprehensible sounds, pointing toward Ethan with growing frustration. From her gestures, Ethan guessed she was demanding something. Does she think I'm hiding something? When Ethan didn't respond, her face twisted into a scowl. Flames erupted in her hand, blazing violently as she hurled a fireball at him without warning. The instant the fire ignited, Ethan's instincts screamed at him. Danger! The kind of danger that, in his previous life, had always been followed by death. Without hesitation, he transformed into bear form, charging toward the far end of the bridge where a cluster of NPCs huddled. Boom! The fireball exploded where Ethan had stood just moments ago, leaving behind a charred, smoldering patch of stone. Despite the solid construction of the bridge, the impact was enough to make it tremble slightly. Ethan glanced back mid-charge, his heart pounding. If that had hit him directly, he wouldn't have survived. Not even a chance. What the hell is she? He muttered under his breath, pushing himself to run faster. Ethan's charge ended with a sharp stop, his massive bear form slamming into an NPC, pinning it in place. The path he'd carved was littered with chaos. NPCs scattered like bowling pins, some unfortunate enough to be knocked clean off the bridge. They plunged into the river of blood below, where the surging crimson torrent swallowed them instantly. The red-haired woman narrowed her glowing eyes as her fireball missed its mark. Without hesitation, she conjured flames in both hands, hurling them toward the bridge in twin arcs. Shit! Ethan cursed. This is a wooden bridge. One hit and this whole thing will go up in flames. Without wasting a second, he transformed into panther form, leaping into the air. His paws landed on the shoulders of crowded NPCs as he darted across their heads, weaving through the chaotic mass. Boom! Boom! The fireballs detonated behind him, engulfing dozens of NPCs in an instant. Ethan braced himself for the sight of flames consuming the bridge, but to his surprise, the wooden planks remained intact, not even a scorch mark. His eyes widened. This wood's incredible. If he could rip a few of these planks off and give them to that master blacksmith, he could forge some fire-immune gear. The thought lingered briefly before reality smacked him back into focus. The red-haired woman had spotted him again. This time, her form shifted into that of a black panther, looking sleek and dangerous, her eyes gleaming with excitement as she sprinted toward him. Surprised, Ethan leapt ahead, landing nimbly atop a cluster of NPCs. He glanced back to see her attempt to jump, only to be pressed back down as though an invisible force restrained her. She hissed in frustration, her claws tearing at the air. So there's an anti-airfield here, Ethan thought. He had noticed the faint barrier earlier. It was close enough to his back that he could practically feel its edge. The woman, unable to leap after him, pushed through the throng of NPCs instead. Perched on an NPC's shoulder, Ethan muttered under his breath. Just what does she want? Why does she keep chasing me? The commotion drew the attention of the tall brute on the far side of the bridge. The creature turned, his blank, bloodthirsty gaze locking onto the chaos. Slowly, the brute began moving across the bridge toward them, slaughtering NPCs in his path with wide sweeps of his massive chain spear. Ethan's chest tightened as the brute's gaze flickered between him and the red-haired woman. The brute's expression shifted. It was the look of a predator who just found new prey. Ethan gritted his teeth, weighing his odds. Trapped between two lethal enemies, he forced himself to remain calm. He took a deep breath and made his decision. He ran. Turning on his heel, he bolted toward the brute, using the crowd of NPCs as cover. Behind him, the woman pursued relentlessly, while ahead, the brute's chain spear twirled menacingly. The distance between them shrank with every second. When the brute was just 10 meters away, he swung his weapon. The chain, impossibly short just moments before, extended in an instant, snaking through the air like a living thing. Ethan's heart stopped as the massive hook at the end of the chain shot toward him. Every instinct screamed at him to move. His fur stood on end, and his body stiffened in terror. At the last moment, Ethan dove headfirst into the crowd of NPCs, disappearing among them. The chain hook, now hurtling toward the red-haired woman, changed course. Ethan's careful positioning had perfectly aligned his two enemies. The woman's focus had been locked on Ethan, her claws outstretched to grab his tail. When he suddenly vanished into the crowd, her expression froze in surprise. It was too late. The brute's chain weapon closed the distance in a heartbeat. The woman reacted quickly, crossing her arms as a fiery red shield materialized in front of her. Bang! Boom! The hook smashed into the shield with a deafening impact. The shield cracked, then shattered in a fiery explosion. The resulting shockwave blasted everything in a 10-meter radius into oblivion. NPCs close to the blast were reduced to ash, while those farther away were thrown into the air. Some landed back on the bridge, battered but alive. Others weren't so lucky, plunging into the river of blood below. The red-haired woman stood her ground despite the devastating impact. Though her shield was destroyed, she didn't move an inch, her feet planted firmly on the bridge. The brute reeled in his chain weapon, the weapon glinting faintly as glowing runes danced along its length. Ethan, hiding among the NPCs, stole a glance at the two figures. What the hell have I gotten myself into? Chapter 48. The Underworld. Ethan didn't bother paying attention to the battle between the two figures. It wasn't something he could interfere with. Keeping low, he crawled forward under the cover of the chaos, inching closer to the bridge on the other side. A quick glance at his skill cooldowns showed charge would be ready in 3 seconds. As the timer hit 0, he shifted. Bear form. He charged again, targeting the farthest NPC within range. Swoosh! The massive form of his bear avatar became a blur as it bolted across the bridge, landing on the opposite side. But just as his paws hit the ground, boom! A fiery explosion blasted Ethan off his feet, the force sending his hulking form flying through the air. Minus 3,549. A massive damage number floated above his head. Ethan's health had plummeted, leaving him with just 201 HP. His heart raced as he realized how close he had come to death. If it hadn't been for the additional health and defense bear form provided, boosting his health to 3,750, he would have been one-shot. The bridge was now eerily empty, all the wandering NPCs obliterated into fine powder. A gray mist lingered in the air, casting a ghostly haze over the area. The bridge itself, however, remained intact, swaying violently for a moment before settling into stillness. At the center of the bridge stood the fiery red-haired woman, her left arm now completely gone. In contrast, the hulking man remained unscathed. The only sign of damage was the dimming glow of the chains and massive hook he wielded. Ethan noticed something strange. As the NPCs disintegrated, the gray mist that remained was flowing toward the man's weapon, as if being absorbed. Unbeknownst to Ethan, the emblem on his chest was also drawing in the mist, though the effect was subtle, nearly imperceptible. The red-haired woman was in bad shape. After taking that hit, she turned and bolted, heading straight for the massive doors they had entered through. But just as she reached the threshold, the monstrous man's chains extended once more, surging forward like a serpent. With a sickening thud, the hook pierced through her body just as she was about to escape. Her scream was blood-curdling, and in an instant, her body withered away, collapsing into a gray vapor that the hook devoured greedily. The man retracted his chain, turning his gaze toward Ethan. "Oh, hell no!" Ethan muttered, turning on his heel. He broke into a full sprint, knowing full well he didn't stand a chance against something that had crushed the red-haired woman so easily. He made it across the bridge, where the wandering NPCs were noticeably fewer. Shifting into stag form, he galloped away as fast as his legs could carry him. As he ran, thoughts raced through his mind. What kind of trial was this? There were no quest prompts, no objectives to follow. Aside from those two absurdly strong figures, all he'd encountered were level 1 NPCs. Earlier, he had done some tests by taking out a couple of NPCs, but there were no quest updates or rewards. Using his appraisal skill, he learned they were all level 1, though their health varied. Those with higher HP left behind thicker clouds of gray mist when killed. The lack of clarity left Ethan frustrated, but he had no choice but to press on. As he pushed forward, weaving past the NPCs, he found himself at the edge of a pitch-black lake. The water was thick and inky, like liquid tar, hiding whatever lay beneath its surface. Ethan studied the scene. A series of floating logs stretched across the lake, forming a precarious path to the other side. But he hesitated. The NPCs attempting to cross were frequently attacked by silver-scaled fish that leapt from the water. Walking closer to the shore, Ethan crouched and inspected the lake. The moment one of the fish dragged an NPC into the water, the dark liquid didn't simply swallow them whole. Corroded them, dissolved them. The NPCs opened their mouths in silent screams, their agony palpable, though no sound escaped. A shiver ran down Ethan's spine as he backed away from the water's edge. After observing the silver fish for a while, he realized their attacks weren't particularly strong. Even the defenseless level 1 NPCs weren't killed outright. The fish's true goal was clear. They aimed to knock their prey into the lake. The real danger wasn't the silver-scaled fish leaping from the water. It was the tiny black ones beneath the surface. When NPCs fell in, they were instantly swarmed. At first, Ethan assumed the lake water itself was corrosive. But after closer observation, he realized it was these black fish, each no bigger than a fingernail, that devoured the NPCs. The black water and the black fish blended together, making them nearly impossible to notice at first glance. But once Ethan spotted them, the sheer density of the swarm sent a shudder down his spine. Anyone with a fear of clusters would have passed out on the spot. Unlike the aimless NPCs, Ethan wasn't about to let himself get knocked into the water by the silver-scaled fish. Deciding to take the initiative, he shifted into panther form and leapt onto the first floating log. His movements were agile, a series of quick leaps and dodges as he navigated the unstable path. Several times, the silver fish lunged at him, but he managed to evade every attack. Midway across, curiosity got the better of him. He slashed at one of the fish, sinking his claws into its body. Minus 1,632. No critical hit. The fish lost about 1% of its health. That meant it had nearly 160,000 HP. The lack of defense surprised him, but before he could finish the creature off, it disappeared back into the water, leaving him no chance to land another hit. Ethan sighed in frustration, wondering how much experience he would have gained from killing one of them. With that much health, its level was bound to be high. The thought of taking one down was tantalizing. As he lingered on the log, several NPCs arrived behind him. They wandered aimlessly, bumping into one another and making the log wobble dangerously. Cursing under his breath, Ethan jumped to the next log. The NPCs he left behind weren't as lucky. Splash, splash, splash. One by one, they tumbled into the water. Ethan glanced back and gave a sheepish shrug before turning away. But the silver-scaled fish weren't done with him. A cluster of them darted toward him, their attacks growing more relentless. Oddly enough, the NPCs behind him weren't targeted anymore. These little bastards hold grudges? What are you, bees? Ethan muttered under his breath, dodging another strike. Not daring to slow down, he quickened his pace, his panther form darting from log to log with precision. Finally, he reached the stone platform on the other side of the lake. Carved into the stone was an ominous message. Path of Souls. Ethan frowned, muttering the words aloud. Despite the eerie symbols not resembling any language he knew, he somehow understood them. Necrotic Domain, Blood Abyss Bridge, Path of Souls. Is this the underworld? Ethan wondered. The world of Ethereal seemed to have thought of everything. Looking back at the wandering NPCs, a thought struck him. Were these the souls of the dead, their spirits drawn to the underworld? And if he kept moving forward, would he reach some version of the gates of the hell? And beyond that, his imagination ran wild. At this point, Ethan hardly cared about the trial itself. The curiosity gnawed at him, pulling him forward. Oddly enough, he realized that, apart from the mindless NPCs, this underworld wasn't as dangerous as it seemed. The terrifying demons, ghostly guards, and nightmarish creatures from mythology were nowhere to be seen. Then he thought back to the hulking figure from the Blood Abyss Bridge, the one with the massive hook and chains. He resembled the Grim Reaper spoken of in legends, the ones tasked with dragging souls into the afterlife. Chapter 49, Ethereal Bloom. Curiosity burning, Ethan continued down the lone path, the terrain growing stranger with each step. While he was wandering, marveling at the sights, he remained blissfully unaware that, somewhere deep within the world of Ethereal, chaos was brewing. The ragged old man, the NPC he had encountered when he started the game, was searching for him with frantic desperation. Where did that kid go? Where the hell did he run off to? A glowing interface hovered in front of the old man, its projection shifting rapidly as his hands manipulated it. Ethereal's map flickered like a slideshow, zooming in and out across different regions. Finally, with an exasperated gesture, the old man brought up an image, Ethan lying unconscious inside his VR capsule. He's in deep sleep, fully immersed in the game. But why can't I sense his soul energy anymore? The old man, usually laid back and carefree, now wore a grave expression. Gripping the flask strapped to his waist, he muttered, "Damn it, I take one little nap, and I lose track of him." He scowled. It took me thousands of years to find a soul as uniquely flawed as his, and now he's gone? With another flick of his hand, the interface paused on a region Ethan had passed through earlier, the Plaguelands. Zooming in further, the old man focused on an altar within the Plaguewood forest. The area was eerily calm, long abandoned by its once formidable guardian, Archmage Sorinth. The old man vanished in a flash and reappeared at the altar. This is his energy, and traces of the underworld too. His eyes narrowed. Could it be? Meanwhile, Ethan entered a narrow valley, the ground beneath his feet glowing with a deep crimson hue. As he moved forward, he realized why. The valley was filled with an endless sea of blood-red flowers, their petals spreading in intricate radiant patterns. Fascinated, Ethan reached out to touch one of the blossoms. Ding! You've discovered a rare herb, Ethereal Bloom. Would you like to use harvesting? Yes, Ethan said without hesitation. Ding! Harvest successful. You've obtained Ethereal Bloom. Ding! You've gained 50 experience points. The notification startled Ethan. Opening his inventory, he inspected the flower. Ethereal Bloom. Rarity, rare. Properties. Adds additional effects when used in alchemy. Effects are unspecified. Can also be consumed to increase soul energy. Description. The Ethereal Bloom is a flower that blooms at the end of all seasons, thriving where life meets oblivion. It takes 1,000 years to bloom and another 1,000 to wither, never meeting its own leaves. Ethan was overjoyed, not because of the flower's properties, which he barely understood, but because harvesting it gave experience points. Normally, gathering herbs outside the game's wild zones didn't offer any XP rewards. I'm so glad I leveled up my herbology skill while working on that land acquisition quest. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to harvest this. Thanks to his diligence, his harvesting skill had reached a level where rare herbs like this could be collected. If he hadn't leveled it, all this experience would have gone to waste. Looking across the endless sea of ethereal blooms, Ethan felt like he'd struck gold. Man, it's great being a druid. Other classes take 2.5 seconds to harvest a flower. I can do it in one flower, another flower, and another, plus 50 XP, plus 50 XP, plus 50 XP. Ethan dove into the field, relentlessly harvesting blooms, the experience rolling in far faster than fighting monsters ever could. As his XP bar climbed steadily, his inventory began filling up with flowers. Ding! Your inventory is full. Unable to harvest more items. Annoyed, Ethan opened his bag to see the problem. Each of his 4 12-slot bags was crammed with random junk from monster drops, but the majority of the space was taken up by ethereal blooms. Packed into stacks of 20, the flowers filled every slot. Checking his XP bar, he grinned. Level 15. 83. 742/156. 800 XP. In just a short time, he'd gained over 80,000 XP. Ethan had never found leveling up so easy. Gazing at the endless field of ethereal blooms ahead, his excitement was beyond words. He began to wonder, could he just keep going until he hit level 100? Maybe level 200? Or even higher? This time, he took a closer look at the bloom's properties and noticed something interesting. It could be consumed directly, boosting soul energy. He wasn't entirely sure what soul energy did, but he remembered it being a reward in the dream trial. Even now, its purpose remained a mystery. Well, it can't hurt, Ethan muttered, pulling one of the blooms from his inventory. He popped it into his mouth, chewing absent-mindedly. To his surprise, it dissolved instantly, leaving no flavor behind. Without hesitation, he began a rhythm of harvesting and eating, figuring it was better to consume them than leave them unused. Ding! Congratulations! You've reached level 16. Ethan did some quick math. He had eaten at least 1,500 blooms by now and was relieved to find that he didn't feel even slightly full. With his worries put to rest, he returned to his harvesting and snacking routine. Ding! Congratulations! You've reached level 17. Ding! Congratulations! You've reached level 18. Ding! Congratulations! You've reached level 21. He had no idea how much time had passed. The constant system notifications had dulled his excitement into monotony. What the hell are you doing? The voice caught him off guard. Harvesting flowers, Ethan replied instinctively, not bothering to look up. A moment later he froze. Slowly standing, he scanned the area, but there was no one in sight. Was he hallucinating? You fool, you've been harvesting flowers in the underworld. Don't you value your life? Just as Ethan bent down to continue, the voice came again, sharp and furious. His eyes widened. That voice. Old man? What, are you here to cause trouble again? Ethan snapped, annoyance bubbling to the surface. First, you force me into this class, then you mess with my stat allocation, and now you're interrupting my leveling? Seriously, find someone else to bother. In the swirling chaos of ethereal, the old man stared blankly, momentarily stunned by Ethan's outburst. He took a deep breath to steady his patience. It had been eons since anyone dared speak to him like this. Still, he knew Ethan's personality too well. This kid thrived on defiance. Push too hard, and he'd dig in like a stubborn mule. Well, listen, I intervened those last 2 times to keep you from screwing up your progression. But what? Ethan interrupted, glaring at the empty air. Spit it out. I've got flowers to pick and levels to grind. The old man sighed audibly, deciding to get straight to the point. Do you even know how long you've been in the underworld? Pausing, Ethan shoved another ethereal bloom into his mouth. He glanced at the in-game clock and mumbled, the timer hasn't moved. How should I know? You've been here for 3 days, the old man said, keeping his tone calm. Did you know that? 3 days? So what? Ethan muttered, waving him off. The old man's voice grew sharper. You have 4 days left. If you don't leave by then, your body in the real world will be sent to the mortuary. Ethan froze mid-chew. What the hell? You're joking, right? He asked, his voice unsteady as a sinking feeling crept over him. Chapter 50, Gates of the Underworld. Hearing the old man's words, Ethan glanced at his level. 21. Experience, 3,661. 650/3. 808000. From memory, he calculated that leveling from 15 to 21 required roughly 5.2 million experience points. Adding in the 3.6 million already in his experience pool, he realized he'd accumulated close to 9 million experience points in total. With his gathering skill casting at 1-second intervals, he earned 3,000 experience points per minute, or 180,000 per hour. That meant he'd been here for at least 50 hours. Of course, Gathering wasn't a constant process. There were interruptions. The old man had said he'd been here for 3 days. That was probably accurate, which meant he hadn't logged out in 3 days. So, you're saying my body in the real world is... Ethan hesitated, asking the question he dreaded. Yes, the old man confirmed. On Earth. Ethan pressed. Yes. So what now? How do I get out? Ethan could already imagine Lila panicking if he'd been stuck in the game for 3 whole days. Getting worried now, are we? The old man sneered.
Yeah.
Sir. Please, just pull me out already. Ethan pleaded, nodding vigorously. Humph. Too late for that. The old man huffed. The underworld operates under its own rules. I can't break them. I'm just here to let you know, you've got 4 days left. After that, even if you log out, your body will be beyond saving. Not even I can bring you back then. The old man's tone softened for a moment, as if giving a final warning. And remember, kid, my name is Morzin. Don't forget it. Okay. But what am I supposed to do? Ethan didn't dare provoke the old man further. Retrace your steps. Leave the underworld through the main gate, and make your way to the Plaguelands. From there, I can pull you out. Morzen's voice began to break up, cutting in and out. Don't go forward to the throne hall. Just... His voice faded entirely. Ethan caught the gist, retrace his steps. But that meant going past that creepy figure wielding that chain weapon. Not exactly an easy task. As if on cue, Morzen's voice flickered back to life for one last message. Oh, one more thing. Don't forget. That emblem on your chest? Throw it away before you leave. Ethan frowned. And what if the death aura here corrupts me? Such lies. Forget. Just. Never. Morzen's voice trailed off completely this time. For days. Huh? Ethan thought to himself, glancing at the endless field of glowing flowers he'd been harvesting. He'd barely scratched the surface of this place. Gritting his teeth, he bent down to gather more. If Morzen had seen this, he would have flown into a rage, cursing Ethan for his priorities. Another system notification chimed as Ethan reached level 22. His bag was now stuffed full of ethereal blooms. Finally, he stood up, gazing back at the way he'd come. Then he turned toward the distant end of the canyon. At its farthest edge, a massive curtain of water stretched from sky to ground. He'd been gathering here for so long. He'd always wondered what lay beyond that waterfall. Ethan's eyes flickered with indecision. Heading back without exploring further seemed like a waste. The canyon was surrounded by towering cliffs that vanished into the sky. The only notable feature was that mysterious waterfall, which seemed to hang impossibly in midair. I've got 4 days. Might as well take a look. It's only half a day's journey back anyway. Shifting into stag form, Ethan dashed through the field of flowers, racing toward the waterfall at full speed. As he approached, the massive water curtain grew even more imposing. Up close, its sheer size was breathtaking. The moment he reached its base, the water unexpectedly parted, creating a narrow gap just wide enough for him to pass through. Ethan peered beyond the gap and saw a vertical staircase of clouds leading downward. Should I go? What if I can't come back? Ethan hesitated, stepping back. As he retreated, the gap in the waterfall closed. Curious, he stepped forward again, and the gap reopened, like an automatic door. After some deliberation, he remembered Morzen's fragmented warning. Don't go forward. Throne Hall. Could this be an alternate exit? If Morzen had known Ethan was interpreting his words this way, he'd have berated himself for even planting the idea. Morzen had been trying to warn Ethan. His actual words had been, don't go forward. If you enter the throne hall, you'll be thrown into the cycle of reincarnation. You might even come out as an animal in your next life. Ethan ignored his doubts and began descending the cloud staircase. When he reached the bottom, he was shocked to see that the waterfall here flowed upward, defying all logic in a surreal loop. By all reasoning, he should have been underground by now. Yet the area was brightly lit, with no discernible source of light. The entire world emitted a faint golden glow, as if the light existed naturally within the space. Looking up, Ethan saw not soil or rock but a sky, a hazy yellow expanse, reminiscent of a sandstorm. At the end of the path stood a massive fortress gate. The towering structure reached into the sky, its walls seemingly endless. Inscribed on the gate were 5 massive words. They weren't written in English, yet Ethan understood them clearly. The gates of the underworld. The fortress was colossal, connecting the sky and the earth. Its walls extended beyond the horizon, cutting across the entire world. As Ethan approached, he noticed the gate itself was slightly ajar. Unlike most gates, which opened outward, this one opened inward. The iron doors, dark as midnight, were held together with massive rivets, each larger than Ethan could fathom. Standing before the gate, Ethan realized how insignificant he was, like an ant before a mountain. Beyond the doors lay pitch-black darkness, dividing the glowing world from a void of mystery. There were no demons or wandering spirits, just the eerie contrast between the two realms. In the distance, Ethan noticed two figures entering the darkness, but they were too far away to make out. One step through the gates of the underworld, and the living don't return. Ethan recalled a saying from folklore. "Damn it, Morzin. You better not be messing with me," he thought nervously. Morzin, in some corner of ethereal, "Ah, this boy. Didn't you even listen properly? You'll get yourself killed with that reckless attitude." Ethan took a step forward. Ah! Suddenly, he was falling. When he finally hit the ground, he stood up and looked around in confusion. "Wait. Is this the gates of the underworld?" Ethan mumbled. Hadn't he just gone inside? Rubbing his head, Ethan noticed something in his hand. A jet-black pendant, smooth and unadorned, resembling a piece of polished obsidian. Where did this come from? He wondered. I just walked through the gate. How did I end up back outside? No matter how hard he tried, Ethan couldn't recall what had happened beyond the gate. It was as if a piece of his memory had been erased. But he did remember one thing vividly. A gentle voice telling him, "You don't have enough time. You need to leave." The warmth in that voice was unlike anything Ethan had ever experienced before. What was that?" he murmured, utterly baffled. Yet, despite his confusion, the voice was crystal clear in his mind. Shaking off the lingering thoughts, Ethan stepped forward again. He was determined to re-enter the gates of the underworld and recover his missing memories. If you want access to fast updates or the full novel in high-quality audio, contact me now and buy. I offer over 300 complete audiobooks from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, and more. No locked episodes, no subscriptions, just one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi. Message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out the full list of available novels on Discord. Start listening to your next favorite audiobook today.